Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 3. Today, we are going to discuss whole system approach. This presentation was brought to you by Amanda, Melissa, and Destiny. In our presentation, we are going to review the key components of a whole system approach as well as go through 2 real life examples. When you think about a whole system approach, the most important thing to remember is that everyone involved in this project has decided to take part of it. And so they are going to be the ones responsible for making sure that that system actually works. It's also important to remember that the knowledge of the collective group is more important than the knowledge of an individual within that working group, which is important to consider when we're thinking about the role of the third-party consultant. When we think about the consultant, it is unlike the role of the consultant that we have discussed in previous lessons. This week, the consultant is more of a neutral observer. That doesn't mean that they won't have a level of expertise that they will provide to the group, but that will be secondary to the collective knowledge of the group. Their role will be more to help facilitate and move the conversation along while also offering a level of expertise and knowledge. When we think about how to best execute a whole system approach, Block provided 3 effective approaches that you should take and consider when executing a whole system approach. The first is transparency. Transparency is simply telling the truth. But when we think about telling the truth, the first person to model and demonstrate that truth telling is the manager of that organization. They have to be open and honest about sharing the direct or current state of that organization. The second most or best practice is to have full participation. That means everyone that is involved in that whole system approach should be fully committed in executing that project to completion, which leads to vulnerability. If you're going to be there, you have to be willing to share your thoughts and opinion to help facilitate and move the conversation forward. So when we think about the whole system approach, the first real life example we found was in a healthcare system in Sweden where they took 125 members throughout the organization from all areas of the organization, from legal to down to your actual healthcare facilitators. And what they found is that if you take the group together, they can collectively work to co-create a vision of what the future will take if they take what they call an appreciative inquiry, which an appreciative inquiry is the capacity to challenge the guided assumptions, to use the collective and diverse thoughts of the group to embrace a different perspective. And what the researchers found is that when a group takes an appreciative inquiry, it shows up with the 4 Ds. The first of the 4 Ds is the discovery, and that's centered around a singular goal. In this case, it was the patient experience. By focusing fully on the patient experience, you can dream and have the group think about all of the different possibilities of what that could actually look like, which leads to the ultimate design, which is the exploring the different options or paths to move forward to elevate that patient experience, which ultimately leads to the destiny, which is the sustainability of that identified goals and results. And what they found through the 4 Ds in appreciative inquiry is that appreciative inquiry can work, but it is important to have the group work towards a clearly articulated singular goal. So this has to be predefined in order to ensure to best use or leverage the time of the individuals within that study. The second thing they found is that politics still has a way of creeping in. When you say you bring a group largely together, that doesn't necessarily mean, or it shouldn't be assumed, that those titles will be left at the door. So it will be important as a facilitator to ensure that those who are involved leave those titles at the door, because those powers could come back to bite the group in the butt later on. And lastly, clarity is important. When you are walking the group towards finding a sustainable goal, it is important to ensure that they are creating action steps, and those action steps are taken outside of beyond the paper into actual action. So those are the things to remember when you are applying the appreciative inquiry, which kind of leads to our second case study also centered around a healthcare system, and what they found that there are 3 things that an organization should do when they are applying a whole system approach. And the first thing is to have a well-defined question or set of questions that the group should be working towards. By giving a well-defined question, it gives the ability to move away from a fixed way of thinking to a more wide range of perspectives to allow the groups to get their thoughts moving. And this can be done through a number of different ways. The first is to focus on the strengths instead of the deficits of the organization. And the second is to use the 3 circles of curiosity. And those 3 circles of curiosity are centered around how can you appreciate what's happened in the past and reflect on the current state and the actions that are taken presently to move towards an idea of what the future could embody. And once you have a well-defined question, it's largely important in the ability to have that conversational choreography. And so that just means you're having the ability to tap into the collective intelligence in the group, which leads to a shared ownership of strategic initiative. And the best way, or the recommendations from the researchers in the case study to have that conversational choreography is the geometry of safety. And when we think about the geometry of safety, it's truly a multiplier. So it's giving the individual participants the ability to think about their thoughts individually and then share those thoughts with a singular partner, and then taking those thoughts of the 2 partners and expanding them out to a smaller group. And finally, those thoughts are shared with a collective group, allowing people to not only formulate their ideas, but having a way to express them and share them with the group. But when you're putting the group together as a facilitator, it is important to remember the power of diversity. So as you're working with those in those conversational choreography, ensuring that you're mixing the group up so that those thoughts are shared with a wide range of people. And the last best practice of this that was found in the case study is to have aligned actions. So conversations can go in a numerous different directions, especially when you're getting a large group of people together, but it is important to align them towards action. And this alignment can be individual alignment or systematic alignment, whichever way you're taking or whichever path you're taking. It is important to ensure that everything is working towards that collective goal. So what we found in review of this week's reading and block and our 2 case studies are these final thoughts. When you're taking a whole system approach, it is important to create a diverse group of individuals so that you can have a breadth and a wide range of knowledge. Secondly, it's important to define the problem, clearly define what your group is working to solve, so that way those collective and diverse group of folks can work towards a singular goal. And as the facilitator, your goal is to facilitate that engaging conversation to really spark that creative problem solving, allowing a lot of different ideas to be generated, but then establishing, once you find those ideas, accountability to ensure that appropriate action is going to be taken to ensure that things are actually taking place. So that wraps up our presentation. We thank you so much for taking the time out and listening in. We really look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments in this week's discussion board. Thanks so much again for your time, and here are our resources. You all have a great rest of your day.